What's up, everybody? Welcome to Mixtapes. I'm your host, Eric Stanglin, and as always, right next to me is my co-host, Mr. Mark Moots. Moots, what's going on this afternoon, my friend?
Well, sir, today I think this is going to be really, really interesting because this gentleman that we're about to talk to is has his name on the byline of many, many important stories from my early guitar playing life.
Oh, amen. Absolutely. I remember seeing this gentleman's name in so many publications, so many articles I read from the likes of many musicians you probably know: Eddie Van Halen, Randy Rhoads, God, George Lynch, Zach Wild, Jakey Lee, Steve Vai, Joe Satriani. I could go on and on and on. But we're not going to do that because we've got the gentleman in the house right now. We're going to talk to him and just have a great time hearing some stories. Welcome to the show, Mr. John Stix. How are you today, sir?
Very, very good. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah,
Absolutely. It's an absolute honor, man. I remember getting Guitar for the Practicing Musician to the house once a month. I lived in a small town in New Jersey and loved getting my hands on that magazine. Guitar World, too, was a big one. Guitar Player. I mean, there were so many of them in
yeah.
my youth. But the first thing I want to ask you personally is, do you remember the first thing that got you into music? Like the first thing you heard musically and went, oh man, like I want to be involved with this somehow.
I'm a child of the 60s, and like many others, the Beatles launched 1,000 picks. So I'm
Yes,
going to say the Beatles on Ed Sullivan uh, probably made me want to pick up the guitar.
that's
Yeah,
awesome.
makes
How,
sense.
if you don't mind me asking, how old were you when you saw that?
I don't know, I'm 72 now. So when did that happen? I don't know my
63?
dates.
I think it was
I think
63
it's
when that
63.
happened. Yeah, so you were a ripe old age of
I
nine.
was I was in elementary school. That's as close as I could get. I
Yeah.
don't know what that means. 8, 9, 10,
Yeah, that seems about right.
something,
That seems about
something
right.
in that
Yeah.
neighborhood.
And
And
was that the game changer for a lot of your friends too? Because I know my mom was like would
oh
talk to me
yeah, I
about it,
mean,
and I was a big
I was a
fan.
Beatles fanatic,
Mhm.
and I can remember my dad, was looking for a way to save a buck every now and then, so he would get me a record by the Bugs, the Beatles. The Bugs doing "I Want to Hold Your Hand and She Loves You,"
Oh, how
but
funny!
I bought Beatle boots. And
Nice.
I my dad was all I got to give him real props too, because later on he actually took me and a bunch of my buddies for my birthday to see the Beatles at Shea Stadium.
Oh
Whoa.
wow,
Is that cool? Is that a great birthday gift?
that's
Hell.
insane.
And then what's
Wow.
even cooler is we got in our what kind of car did we have then? A Rambler. That was the name of it. He drove us to Shea Stadium. We got out. We went to our seats. The Beatles played for 20 minutes, So
Yeah,
my
not long.
dad stayed in his car the whole time. He just waited for the concert.
Wow.
That's
The
amazing.
opening act was The Circle. Their big hit was Red Rubber Ball, composed by Paul Simon.
Wow.
Oh,
And they were the opening act. And the Beatles played using the PA system that they had for announcements. That was
That's
it.
hmm
that's what I heard. That's what I heard about that.
And there
Yeah.
was a lot of screaming, but it was a lot of fun. Uh, and there was no doubt in my mind that the bug hit me with the Beatles, and I was playing in bands, and we weren't necessarily doing Beatles songs. We were doing Little Honda by the Beach Boys. We do Wah Diddy by Man for Man because my buddy's mom had a Hammond organ, so everybody would have to go to that house to play.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think we played uh, "My Back Pages" by the Byrds, the Bob Dylan song.
Oh yeah, yeah.
hmm
Uh, we I totally got into being in a band, and it became a wonderful social thing. I didn't know it at the time, but
Sure.
it probably kept me out of trouble because in those days I was too young to do drugs anyway. So
Right.
I just wanted to play guitar. Every Saturday we were just playing guitars, and then the first band that I really got into on my own was courtesy of my cousin Gary Stix. he introduced me to the Blues Project, with Al Cooper, and they had an album called Blues Project Projections, which I still think is just spectacular. And wherever the Blues Project were playing, I would go see them. They play at a amusement park, I go to the amusement park. They play at a club, I go to the club.
Okay.
And once the music bug bit me, uh, I was into it full time. I would mow the lawn and get $2.50. And in those days, for $2.50, I remember one day I bought a double, I think it was, I bought Serialistic Pillow from the Jefferson Airplane. I bought Are You Experienced for
Oh,
$2.50.
wow.
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
and that was it. And then when I got an electric guitar, I play Last Time by the Rolling Stones. I
Yep.
play Around and Around. I
Okay.
thought it was by the Rolling Stones. I didn't know it was by Chuck Berry.
Right. Cover. Yep. Like as much of them
And
did in the early days.
and in those days, you'd rehearse, and I don't even know if we played anywhere. But if you got it right in rehearsal, it was as good as anything else. And by
Sure.
the way, I still feel that today.
Sure.
Yeah.
You're playing music and you're lost in that moment, doing "Get Off My Cloud." That's as good as it's going to get. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the whole point of music, to be in the moment, and you're naturally high in that moment. And if you played your guitar part just right, you melted into the band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Play it, something's missing. But if you got it right, you were not standing out. You were part of the choir, which was the band.
Yeah, that's such a great
Yeah.
way to put it, man. I spent many years doing that, my formative years for sure. And I always thought, like when you said, when you get it so right where you can't tell the difference when when you feel like you're inside of it. You're not like, oh, it's obvious I'm a little off here. Yeah, there is something special about that. And then when you get together with some guys and put a band together, that's the next level of it. So you go the journalist route. Were you doing like journalism in high school? And like, how does that
Well,
come about?
I am incredibly lucky in my career.
Okay.
I was just a music lover and a music geek, which meant that I would buy albums and I played in my little bands. We played a lot. It's My Life by the Animals. We were big, played a lot of Animal songs because we had a keyboard player who was good.
Okay.
And anyway, uh, what happens is uh, a music teacher, who was a friend of mine, had a babysitter,
Okay.
and the babysitter wrote something in a magazine. And this music teacher just said to me, I'll bet you that you could write too. Not that I'd written anything.
Right.
But I was like, oh, okay, maybe I could. Maybe I could. Now, remember, I'm a music geek. So, what I haven't mentioned yet is my first job that I got paid for. I was 16 years old. I was writing music curriculum for a high school.
Wow.
Not that I was a brilliant player or anything, but I had a knack for being able to share ideas and musical ideas
Sure.
with people that was beyond my ability to play. I'll give you an example. I had a class I called it Music is People. And when I would teach counterpoint, I wouldn't do it by saying, listen to this line and then listen to this second line and how they intertwine. I'd come at it from left field. I knew how to juggle. So I said, watch these juggling patterns. And I would juggle. And when another line came in, I changed the pattern. So people could visually get it
Smart.
as well as hear it. Because I'm a big believer that people learn by how they take in their environment. For example, if you're doing math, some people can do just math problems. Some people have to see the pie. Here's a pie, and we'll make the sections of the pie, and we can visually do it. Some people have to write it out, like they read it and they get it.
Right.
Just like you're putting together a bicycle that you got as a kid for Christmas. The directions could say, here's part A, and you read it. The directions could have visual, that you see how they go together. And these days it could be oral. They could be like YouTube,
Yeah.
somebody talking you through it as
Sure.
well.
Mhm.
Sure.
So uh, I taught, like I said, uh, uh, the idea of counterpoint by visually showing you what to watch, and that visual would go with the lines. Another way I would teach the blues progression was the same way. Contact trading on. I'd use an Allman Brothers song, and when the A, you guys play guitar?
Oh,
Mhm.
You
absolutely.
know the
Yeah.
blues progression, yes?
Yeah. 1 4 5. Yeah.
Okay.
Like you're talking like one
So
way
we're on
out
the
or
one
something.
chord. So the one chord, while they're playing the one chord, I'm juggling one pattern.
Right.
When they go to the four chord, I do a different pattern.
Right.
When they go to the five chord, I do another pattern.
Sure.
So you can hear it, but I'm giving you visual clues that are going to help you to approach it
Yes.
beyond just your ear. I
Makes
don't know if
total
that
sense.
makes sense.
No, it makes total
Yeah.
sense. Yeah. Yeah. I
You
think
know,
it's,
I'm
you feel it or
sharing
you hear
music
it.
with people who are not musicians.
Right.
Sure.
That's always sort of been my thing.
Hmm.
And I've been pretty forward and pretty friendly. And in the 70s at the Village Vanguard, I made friends with this wonderful jazz piano player named Chick Corea.
Oh, wow.
And uh,
Yeah.
he asked me to be his tour manager for the band Return to Forever. In
Okay.
that time, the band was Chick Corea, Stanley Clark, Bill Connors on guitar, Mingo Lewis on congas, and Steve Gadd on drums.
That's
Yeah.
a killer lineup
They
right
never
there.
made a record. Well, actually, I think they even made the record, but Steve Gadd's wife said, "You can't go on the road with these guys. You're making too much money as a studio musician."
Oh,
So
wow.
that's how they got Lenny White.
Wow.
Anyway,
Wow.
so I'm friends with this great bass player, Stanley Clark. Now, I hadn't written anything, but I said to myself, I'm going to write to a variety of magazines, including Guitar Player magazine. And I'm going to say, if I send you a story on Stanley Clark, would you consider it for publication? And I enclose a self-addressed stamped postcard. Check off yes, I would, or no, thank you.
Mm.
Okay.
Well, I got a yes from a jazz magazine called Different Drummer in upstate New York. So I went to Stanley's house and we just talked about music,
Yeah.
wrote it up. First thing I ever wrote was a cover story for a magazine.
Wow.
Wow.
That's what I meant about being lucky.
Wow.
That's insane. That
Yeah.
and like no
So then
journalism classes really in school?
no,
Nothing like
nothing.
that?
I
Wow.
just put it together, and then I kept writing. And in that case, it was jazz. So I was writing stories for them, and I was interviewing, Chick Corea, Keith Jarrett, Ron Carter, Tony Williams. These were, I knew everybody in the Miles Davis band, but Miles Davis.
Wow.
I was in 1971. I spent some time with John McLaughlin for Intermountain Flame.
Oh,
It was a great
wow.
story. Uh,
Wow.
he's he's with Sri Chinmoy, and he's studying. That's why he's the Mahavishnu, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and uh, he's very humble. And part of his uh, commitment to the religion and to his guru is the guru has a vegetarian restaurant in Queens. And I go to the restaurant,
Right.
and keep in mind, so this is Intermounting Flame, maybe even Birds of Fire, but this is the Mahavishnu Orchestra at its highest.
Prime. Yeah, the prime.
He
Yeah.
is my waiter. I go to the
What?
restaurant, and John McLaughlin, he's playing Amy Fisher Hall on the Saturday, but on a Thursday night, he's a waiter at a restaurant.
Wow.
Wow.
And I remember saying to him, I said, I play guitar. And this is what he said to me. You play guitar? I play guitar too. Blew my mind. Anyway,
Oh my God, that's
so I'm doing
hysterical.
all of these interviews, and again, mostly for jazz guys. And I send something into Guitar Player magazine,
Okay.
an interview I did with one of my favorite, rhythm guitarist, Cornell Dupree.
Okay.
Cornell Dupree is famous for doing all kinds of great stuff with Aretha Franklin.
Okay.
Okay.
And he was a session guy. He was in the band Stuff as well.
Okay.
It was Richard T., Cordell Dupree, Gordon Edwards, Steve Gadd, Eric Gales. And so did a ton of sessions on a ton of hits and records. And so eventually I get a uh, check in the mail from a Japanese company, and they say, we have bought some of your interviews and articles and reprinted them in Japanese. I said, well, that's interesting. I wrote back and said, you don't have to do that. What if I be your American correspondent for this Japanese magazine? I said, oh, that's a great idea. What a great idea. And so because of that, I become a foreign correspondent for
Wow.
a major Japanese rock magazine. And then
Oh.
from that point on, they fly me all over the US to interview all kinds of musicians, mostly guitar players.
Right.
But, well, I'm doing Joe Ponte, the violin player.
Right.
I'm doing Willie Dixon because I'm thinking, man, I want to talk to him before he passes away so I could get
Sure.
some insight into the blues,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm doing, Stu Goldberg, a great fusion. John Hummer, I'm doing from Mahavishnu,
Okay.
But, and I'm having a grand old, almost doing Billy Joel,
Okay.
for these guys. And it's great for me because I'll go somewhere as a foreign correspondent, and maybe they'll have a foreign correspondence day, and there'll be 12 or 15 of us interviewing somebody. And let's say we're interviewing Robert Plant.
Okay.
So the guy from France goes, Robert Plant, when will you be playing Paris? And the guy from Rio de Janeiro says, Robert, when will you be playing in Rio? And I say, I noticed that you quoted the Moby Grape in the song, so he just key in on me.
Yeah.
And
Smart.
then and so I had a great rep in the land of Japanese rock music. And I'm doing the Police, and the Japanese call me up and say, we want you to do an interview with a new guitar player named Van Halen. And I say, Van Morrison? No, I go, no, Van Halen. so I meet Eddie when he's an opening act in New York for the first time.
Okay.
It's Roddy Montrose, Van Halen, and Journey. That's the triple bill.
Oh yeah, yeah. Famous tour.
And Eddie's just a kid.
Yeah.
And we meet then, and we become friends, and we talk for decades after that.
That's
Wow.
amazing. What so let me ask you this. Let's just stop here for a second. So you meet him on that tour, right? That's one of the first opening tours they do. I know they open for Sabbath at some point too. I can't remember which is which.
After my tour, they opened for Sabbath.
Okay, all right. So that was one of the first ones they did. So you come from like a Beatles background, psychedelic rock, but you like jazz too, obviously. What were your first impressions of Eddie when you heard him play?
I don't know personally that I got it right away.
Okay.
I got Hendrix right away
Yeah.
because I thought he was speaking another language
Sure.
that I understood. I think that's what was amazing about Hendrix
Yeah.
is that he added vowels and consonants and all kinds of language that nobody's ever heard before, but somehow we understood it right away.
Yeah. I get that.
Van Halen, because I'm coming from the Clapton Page kind of thing, and I don't know that I got it right away. I liked it right away.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I understood what he was doing just by hearing it.
Sure.
Okay.
Makes complete sense.
And I can remember him saying to me, more of a kid than you. I mean, I'd spoken to what I believe to be three geniuses that got to do their thing in my lifetime.
Okay.
That meant that they got to explore all kinds of worlds,
Yeah.
musical worlds that were different. The three geniuses that I got to know well and spend time with were Les Paul,
Uh-huh.
Eddie Van Halen, and Jeff Beck.
Wow.
Randy
Yeah. Yeah.
Rhoads did not get enough time to explore what his genius would have been.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
I I agree with you. So the Ed stuff, you had the relationship with him for decades, which is amazing, and I'm sure you were the go-to guy anytime there was a new Van Halen record. Let me ask you this. I'm curious.
Let me tell you a Van
Yeah,
Halen story that I love,
please do.
and it's true about Randy too, but he didn't like again, he didn't get as much chance to explore it. Ed, Randy, Jeff, Les Paul. They were all really open and honest people, and their music flowed out of them without practicing, without working. With it wasn't something they just turned on the light switch and there it was. There it was, you know. And one time I'm with Ed, literally we're at uh, uh, Uniondale in Long Island. It'll come to me in a moment. The name of the
Oh, Nassau Coliseum?
Nassau Coliseum. Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome. You're welcome.
Nassau Coliseum. And this is so wild. We're sitting there and he's talking. He goes, "You got to help me." I go, "What are we doing?" He goes, "We got to build a guitar for tonight." So I'm with him. He gets there early and helping him while he solders in a pickup and gets the guitar built for that evening. I mean,
Wow.
how cool is that?
That's
How
Wow.
independent is that? That it's certainly the second album, maybe even the third album, and he's still building guitars because he loves to do it.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. He was a genius, man. I mean, you knew him
And
obviously way better than I did.
and I helped him put build a guitar for that evening.
That's
Just because I was,
insane.
come on, man, let's do this. It's like, let's go fishing. Let's play guitar.
That's
Wow.
insane. And you
You know,
guys you're what? I mean, he's in his early 20s, you're in your late 20s. Is that about
yeah,
right? Somewhere in
yeah,
that range? So
yeah,
you're right around
yeah.
the same age.
I also had a wonderful and scary experience with him. I was backstage and I was asking him about little guitars because I didn't get that he had played it on a little guitar. He played it on a little guitar.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But we're after the concert, he brings me back and I ask him about it. He picks up the guitar and he goes, "Yeah, this is how you do it." Da, 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 da. Then hands me the guitar and says, "Now you play it."
You're like, nope.
I don't know what excuse I made, but the net result was nope.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, absolutely,
Wow.
man. I
But
mean,
he was that easy, he had no ego. None of these guys uh, had an ego about it. But those are uh, fun stories.
th-
Anyway, so I'm
Wow.
doing the Japanese thing, and I start writing little columns for Circus Magazine,
okay.
Hmm.
and I start. Uh, a friend of mine uh, was working at Circus Magazine, and he got a gig with Harris Publications, and they were going to start a new magazine. And they called me in and they said, "What can we do with guitars that hasn't been done?" And I said, "Well, this is real easy. Guitar player was the only game in town, and I loved them, but I said, let's do a magazine that has an attitude. Guitar player, everything was good because they wanted all their advertisers to be happy. Every album was good. There was no real review. They would tell you about it, but they wouldn't have an opinion,
Right, right.
Hmm.
so I said, let's have an opinion. Let's do rock. Let's make it exciting. And uh, I was one of the founders of Guitar World magazine. The
Wow.
very
Wow.
first cover of Guitar World was a cover. It was a photo I took of Johnny Winter.
Wow.
And I did the classic Ed Van Halen covers
I
for
I
them,
can
where he
see
has
it
the
with
snake
with
guitar.
the shark one, right? Was it the shark
The
guitar?
snake. was a snake guitar.
Oh, the snake guitar. That's right. The snake guitar. Right. Yeah.
And that issue was the John Stix issue. In other words, I must have had 5 out of 7 articles in there were by me. In that one issue, I had Van Halen, I had Larry Carlton, I had Steve Morse, and I had somebody else. I can't remember. I
Wow.
just had, I wrote everything. But I started Guitar World magazine. And then I started Guitar for the Practicing Musician
Hmm.
because this was kind of cool. Again, lucky. A friend of mine, a photographer named Steve Joester, was friends with the band Judas Priest.
Okay.
And Judas Priest was going to put out a songbook with his Cherry Lane company.
Hmm.
And they wanted someone to interview Judas Priest for the songbook. So they hired me. So I did the interview. I bring the interview into the office. Instead of mailing it in as finished work, I physically bring it into the office. I bring it to the office. And when I bring it in, I see a picture of Pat Benatar, and on top it says Guitar Magazine. I was, again, we're talking lucky. The president of the magazine happened to walk into this office while I'm sitting there. Remember, it's random. Whatever time I come in, it's random.
Yeah.
He walks in randomly, and I say to him, I don't know him from a hill of beans. I say to him, I know what to do with a guitar magazine. You make it rock, you make it color. I mean, I based it after Player magazine in Japan. I
Right.
said we're going to start with photos up front. We're going to make it all color. We're going to make it not pure rock. We're not going to talk about how great Chet Atkins is, or Segovia, or Joe Pass, or Pat Martino. We're just going to deal with people who are playing Madison Square Garden and rock out and sell T-shirts. And we also, in this case, we added the music because it was a publishing
That's what
company.
I
Hmm.
was going to ask you when
Yeah,
that happened.
the whole idea. This is how I used to sell it at the NAMM show. I would say, imagine there's a magazine for the Broadway audience, and the magazines for the Broadway audience, uh, they interview the director, and they interview the playwright, and they interview the composers, and they interview the actors, and they talk, and the people who run the show and the backstage, and all the sets. But imagine if that magazine also gave you the entire script and the musical portions of that Broadway show,
That's smart. That's
which was
really
the
Yeah.
smart.
buy. That's Guitar Magazine. We're going to give you all the articles on all the interviews and all the insights of the players, and then we're going to give you the music. And because guitar players traditionally don't read music, we're going to give it to you in tablature. And the owner said to me, why don't we do an approximation of what they play? And I said, we could do that. But if we give them a mirror image, note for note transcriptions, nobody can beat us. That's Guitar for the Practicing Musician.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so smart. And then, so did you have a hand in doing any of the transcriptions or no?
Oh, no, no, I'm not going to say that that is my
Yeah.
uh, bailiwick at all.
Yeah.
My hand was we want it to be exact rather than to be partial or just the riffs.
Sure.
We
Sure.
want the whole thing.
Sure.
As long as it's going to be, as short as it's going to be. D is going to be 2 pages, and Sultans of Swing is going to be 21 pages.
Seems about accurate
Yeah.
Uh,
with
so
all those Mark Knopfler
Uh,
riffs. Hey, let
so
me.
that's the overall arc. Now, the thing that I did with Guitar Magazine, my partner in crime was a guy named Bruce Pollock. And Bruce was an amazing writer and an award-winning writer and a music lover, particularly of the 50s and 60s. And one of the things that we both agreed on, I've always said that great guitar playing only lasts a lifetime if it hitches a ride on a great song.
That's a great
Hotel
point.
Yeah.
California.
Yeah, great point.
Forever. Jeff Beck was perhaps my all-time favorite guitar player. He's still a guitarist because he never hitched a ride on a hit.
It's
Yeah,
true.
you're not wrong. I mean, you're not
Eric
wrong at all.
Clapton had hits.
Yep.
Jimi Hendrix had hits,
Yep.
Led Zeppelin had
Yep.
hits, and those songs with great guitar playing that live on a great song have lived forever.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I still teach
good
some of
guitar
those songs for
playing
sure.
is, you know, I don't know, just good guitar playing. Uh, there's a lot of good guitar playing. Uh, George Lynch is a really good guitar player.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah,
That
he's
guitar
great.
playing will not live forever. Crazy Train will live forever. I
It
don't
will
know.
because of the song. You're not wrong. I mean,
Mr.
we
Crowley lives forever because of the song.
yeah. Yeah, you don't hear you hear Crazy Train in a football stadium. You don't hear like It's Not Loved by Dokken in a football stadium.
Right.
That's
And
a great
so that's
point.
why in the magazine we also had a songwriter column. And we actually included songwriters like Carole King and Randy Newman because they were great songwriters.
Yeah.
It
Mhm.
wasn't just that you were a great guitar player that wrote great songs. Great songwriters had insight.
Yeah.
Smart.
Guitar players could be part of that insight.
Very smart. Let me ask you this. I'm curious. So when you're writing for the Japanese magazine, do they tell you to go interview Randy Rhoads because Quiet Riot 1 and 2 was huge in Japan? Or do
You
you
know,
end up
actually,
going through
no.
guitar pool practice a musician
They
first?
didn't. They let me think who was big in Japan that wasn't. No, they wanted bands who were big in America.
Okay.
The answer to your question is no. I interviewed Randy Rhoads because when I heard Blizzard, I was blown away immediately.
Yeah.
I said, well, it was interesting. You know, here is the
Yeah, I
cover.
own that one. I own that one.
Wow.
Yep.
I haven't looked at this in a dog age, but uh, I was reading my introduction, and I'm going to read it out loud here.
Yeah, please do.
Because this is what I got from Randy right away. I remember listening to Blizzard of Oz and thinking, this guitarist is great. He is fluid in his technique, brilliant in his construction, hot as they come with passion, and an out of the box stylist. That's what I got before I met him. And when I heard that record, I said, I gotta meet this guy.
Yeah.
I really want to meet this guy.
Yeah.
And we met backstage once again in Uniondale.
Yep.
The opening act was Def Leppard. And
Okay.
I went early and I interviewed Pete Willis
Oh, and
and
Steve
Steve
Clark.
Clark, the original
Nice.
guitarist from Def
No,
Leppard.
that's cool.
Nice.
And then I met Randy in the guitar room.
Okay.
And here's an interesting story. I don't think I've told anybody this story.
Oh, wow.
I had a thing with Japan. One of the great things that they provided for me, they said, we want you to go to guitar players' homes and take pictures of them at home with their instruments.
Okay.
And we will pay you an insane amount of money to do this. And you can do as many as you want. There is no limit to
Wow.
who and what you can do.
Okay.
Wow.
And I did this for a couple of years, and it more than paid the rent. This is beyond the journalism I was doing, writing for them,
Sure.
And if you want, I'll show you a couple of those pictures that I did, and then tell you a story about Randy.
Oh, please.
Can I run in the next room and get
Yeah,
something?
absolutely.
Yeah,
You have the ability to edit this or not?
Yes,
absolutely.
absolutely we
Okay.
can. Yeah.
I'll be back in one moment. Okay?
No problem.
If this works, you'll do it. If it doesn't work, then you cut it
Hey.
out.
Yeah, no worries.
Here's an example. I don't know if you can you see that well enough?
Oh, yeah. I can
Yeah.
see great.
That's Tom Scholl's
Yeah.
home studio. That's an
Wow.
example of the photos that I would take.
Wow.
Right? Okay, I'm going to give you another example.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite photos. This is Pat Metheny at his home. Now, if you
Wow.
look at this photo, a couple things come to mind. One, look where the guitars are hanging. They're hanging by their tuning pegs on a windowsill.
Yeah.
My wife asked him if he would do this, and he said, sure. No, I would never ask.
No, me
So
neither.
that
No.
one thing is cool. The other thing that's cool is if you can see behind him, there's white. It was snowing. So
Uh-huh.
what you have in the composition
Oh,
is the stained glass windows. You've got the guitars hanging out by the tuning pegs on the windowsills, and then you have the snow behind it.
Wow.
it's a
Anyway,
great photo.
so I did one of these photos of Randy at the guitar room uh, at the Nassau Coliseum.
Okay.
And the story is this. I took a photo, I took one photo, and the camera broke. That was the last photo I ever took with that camera.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
And that was the end of me doing these things.
Oh, you didn't do any more of them after that? The camera
Camera
broke?
broke.
And oh, wow.
They had sent me a Pentax, I don't know whether it's 6x7, 5x7. It's the kind of camera that they would take for a Vogue model. It was huge.
Yeah.
And it had negatives that were this big, But it little, I guess, a little spooky that the very last one was Randy.
Yeah.
yeah.
Was
Hmm.
was was that the one with the picture of him sitting down with the pedal board with the Les Paul? Was that your picture?
No, I think it's a Niels Lozauer picture. My
Okay.
picture is he's standing there and he's got guitars on either side of him.
Oh, okay. Okay.
you know. And what's kind of weird about it, I'm going to tell you the story about that picture. That picture is part of the LP sleeve on the tribute album.
Okay.
Okay.
Two things happened there. One, uh, they credited it to Niels Lozauer and not me. So I didn't get the credit and I didn't get the money.
Oh,
But,
Hmm.
jeez.
but more interesting was they flopped it. So it looks like he's left-handed. And I said to Sharon, I said, one, I took that picture. She goes, oh, okay, okay. And I said, but why was it flopped?
Yeah.
Because it looks very unprofessional.
Yeah.
If you have the LP of Tribute
Oh, I did.
and you take it out, you'll see my photo, but it's going to look like he's left-handed. It looks like the Les Paul is flipped,
Yeah.
Hmm.
right? And you know what she said to me? Oh, we're doing a contest to see if anybody can find any
Oh, God.
mistakes. Now, I think she really said it to me to try and be serious.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking to myself, it's again not professional. But
No.
either
Hmm.
way, it's okay that I didn't get credit, and it's not okay that it was flopped.
No.
But
Yeah.
I feel good that that photo is part of the tribute album.
So when you first interviewed him, you got to interview him a couple times. Is that correct?
Yes, I
Yeah.
did, and we got along well enough that we would sometimes just talk and not even record. Like
Yeah.
you and I are talking, I guess we're
Yeah.
recording, but
Right. Right.
uh,
Hmm.
your buddy calls you and you talk about guitars, and then later on, you know, you wish you had recorded everything because you don't have your buddy,
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
you know. And so we got along really well. And the thing about Randy is he was so open and honest and always looking for more. Like one time we talked, again, we didn't record it, but he said to me, John, what do other guitar players do to get better on the road? I somehow I'm affiliated with the story that uh, he was asking what to do, and then I suggested, that he get a teacher, a classical teacher on the road or whatever.
Right. Right.
But he was always thinking that way. He was saying, he said, what do professional guitar players do so they could keep progressing as musicians while they're on the road? And I had to tell Randy they don't. They go on the
Yeah.
road, they play the gig, they party hard, they have to travel, and they're doing the job. They love the music, but they're actually not thinking about how do I get to the next step as a musician while I'm on the road. And he asked me about Van Halen. He specifically asked what Ed does. And Ed was another guy who is totally open and honest, has no idea where it comes from. but it comes out of him so naturally. But he works on it that he loves to play. He never practiced. He would go in a room and just play because he loved it.
Yeah.
And he would play for hours and hours and hours. And out of that, ideas would come. I remember saying to Ed, why don't you do a solo record? And he said to me, every Van Halen album is a solo record. And it took
Interesting.
me a long time to get it. I didn't
Yeah.
get it. What he said is, I'm playing and I'm playing with Alex and we're jamming away and having a great time and ideas are flowing. Those ideas become the song, and that instrumental piece I would give to David Lee Roth or I'd give to Sammy Hagar.
Right.
And they would put on the vocals and the lyrics. I'm writing instrumentals. So he didn't feel the need to do a Eddie Van Halen solo record because every Van Halen album was, in his mind, he did the music. He did the music. Elton John writes the music, Bernie Taupin writes the lyrics, but we think of it as Elton John.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes
But
complete
Elton
sense.
John just did the piano part.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
probably wrote the melody too. But Van Halen, if you go on YouTube, you can find all kinds of stripped down Van Halen tracks and Ozzy Randy tracks. So that's just the guitar. For the Van Halen tracks, if you listen to it alone, that's the song. That's what he was writing. He wasn't writing to the lyric. He wasn't writing to the melody. He was just following his own muse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Following his brother, probably. They were so
Yeah.
locked and tight together.
So Randy would tell me that on the first album, he goes, we're getting to know each other. The band thought he was kind of funny because they thought he's a guitar teacher. Is he gonna, he's just a guitar teacher.
Right.
You know what Randy charged for a half an hour lesson?
Oh, tell me. I'd love to know. I'm gonna say, let me take a guess. So 70s. I'm gonna say
I would say
$8 a half
80,
an hour.
right?
$8 a
It's
half an hour?
like half an hour
Yeah,
lesson.
yeah, $8. That's my guess.
Yeah, $7, $8.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
$7, $8. And this is while he's in Quiet Riot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he taught a lot from what I've understood, like 60, 70 students a week too.
Oh, and he loved it. I mean, he absolutely told me that he learned by teaching. We discussed this a couple times because in order to be a good teacher, like I said, I think I'm a better teacher than I am a player, right? In order to share something, you have to internalize it. You have to feel so comfortable with it that you could break it down and share it.
Yeah.
And Randy would learn things because his students would come and ask him, what should we do over this chord progression? And if he didn't know, he'd think about it and study it. So his students would provide input that he would then absorb and then send back to them with his own vision and taste, his style to it. So it's
Sure.
interesting that he didn't learn licks. I learned licks, I was
Yeah.
playing Eric Clapton licks. I was playing Mississippi Queen, whatever.
Sure.
He wasn't learning licks. He was jamming with people, but he did not have a guitar hero that he wanted to emulate the way Van Halen wanted to emulate Cream era Eric Clapton.
Right.
Hmm.
Right.
Randy loved playing and always played. If anything, he would study classical guitar. In fact, he wanted to leave. I guess you know this already. He wanted to leave Ozzy. That's why I'm sure Ozzy feels really bad. He said, I quit. And Ozzy talked him out of it.
Yeah.
And it's after he said he quit and Ozzy talked him into staying that obviously the accident happened.
Right. Right.
If he had let him leave, he would have been alive.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. So, Blizzard tour, you get to interview him. I'm pretty sure you interviewed him on the Diary tour also. What was your impression between the two tours of him as like a human being, like growing up on the road, and what was your interpretation and your between the first two records? Like how much do you think he
Well,
grew on that second
I
record?
didn't
Or
get when I talked to him the first time, we talked about the first two records, and I didn't get it at all. I
Okay.
didn't get it. He confused me because he had a British accent, but I knew he was from California.
Oh, weird, right? Weird. Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay.
He could. He also confused me that he told me. It took me a long time to realize he didn't even have a stereo as a kid.
That's wild.
You know, the idea of not learning licks. He didn't have a stereo. He didn't have a record player.
Yeah.
And what I also didn't get that he explained to me is that they went over, they met, they became musical buddies, they jammed, they turned the jams into songs, and then they turned them into a song in the studio. So he said to me, the first record, there was a getting to know you thing. There was a let's have fun and see where this goes kind of thing. And then there was a we'll craft something in the studio thing. This Then they go out and they tour England. Before they do anything else, they come back and they make the second record.
Right.
Hmm.
So he didn't really have time to come up with his best guitar ideas on the second record. So by the time I talked to him, and that's all Coliseum, Diary's already in the can,
Right.
you know? So
Yeah.
it's a strange thing. So he said to me that he really liked the second album as a composer. He says the first album we ease in and we're doing all this stuff, we're getting to know each other, and it's puppy love, first love, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, first sex, it's great, right?
Right. Right.
No. So in the second one, they just make the record. They just, Sharon says we have so much time to make the record, we make the record. So the way I interpret it with him and he with me is the first one is ta-da, I'm making a statement, I feel real good about it. The second one is I feel pretty good about the compositions, but I didn't have time to take my guitar playing where I wanted to go,
Okay.
right? And I mean, he even talks about with the song, he says, Little Dolls. He said, it was just,
A guide track,
it
right?
was a guide track, yeah.
Yeah.
He said, it wasn't supposed to be kept. There was a lot of stuff there on that album that, he was good enough, but it wasn't as great as he wanted it to be. Remember I said he asked me, how do I get better on the road?
Yeah.
That's as he's doing the second tour. He's doing the Diary, right?
Okay.
Doing the Diary tour. So he's trying to get better, but it's not on Diary. He's trying to get better for the next album.
Okay. That makes sense.
But what he thinks is that if he could study classical guitar, which is what he was going to do, right? He was going to quit the band. And Ozzy says, well, you're a rock star. You can't quit. Well, you don't want to quit. You're at the height. Why would you do it? He goes, no, I got to get into the music. I don't, I'm not concerned with being a rock star. I want to get better in the music,
Right.
right? I need input. And while he loved Ozzy, he admitted to me he was never a Black Sabbath fan.
Right.
Hmm.
I believe that he really didn't want to do the Speak of the Devil album,
Right.
but they wanted him to do it. He didn't want to do it at all. And he said to me, and I think I printed it afterwards, he said, being in Ozzy is like being in Kiss. People put you in a box. And I want to break out of that box. I want to do more. He was enthralled with Earl Klugh,
Yeah.
the
Jazz guy.
nylon string
Yeah.
jazz guitar player. He was enthralled with Jean-Luc Ponty, the violin player. And I absolutely talked to him. I said, I believe I can help you. I'll introduce you to Steve Gadd and a bunch of studio guys. He wanted to do session work. He wanted to do stuff that had nothing to do with Ozzy.
Yeah. Yeah. He just wanted to branch out as much as he could. I mean, he was that good of a player that he could have.
And so that's part of his genius that he never got to develop. But the input for that, the input even for the next Ozzy studio album, had it been done, was going to come from studying classical guitar.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Big,
He wasn't studying, Steve Vai. He wasn't studying, Jeff Beck. I mean, he loved Jeff Beck. I know that he loved not Clapton. He loved Leslie West.
yeah,
He really liked Michael Schenker, you know,
Yeah.
and he really also had a love for Alice Cooper.
yeah.
Hmm.
You
I've
know,
read that.
I don't know that I personally heard it. He felt that he was able to get it out, and Kevin felt that he was able to get it out a bit in Quiet Riot. But not being a big Alice Cooper fan or not being that knowledgeable, I didn't have the vocabulary to recognize if he did it.
Sure, sure.
Mm.
That makes sense. And
Mhm.
and you guys were talking, you guys were like you said, when you were talking on the phone, was that normally like when he was on the road or would he call you
Yeah, he
when he
would
got
be on the
home
road.
too?
Yeah, on the road, on the
Yeah.
road. You know, like I said, he was asking, "How do I get better being on the road?"
Was that a wild question for you too? Because
Nobody's ever asked me that
I
question.
know that's what I mean. Like it's that's an interesting
And I've
question,
talked
right?
to a zillion guitar players, and I can tell them with authority, nobody but you is trying to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a
And
teacher in
he
him.
also was so honest. I could remember uh, that when I asked him what your strength and weakness is, he said it was his sound. If the sound wasn't good, he couldn't play well. And then a few minutes later, he just said, I got to be honest, my weakness is my girlfriend. If she comes around, I don't want to play, and I love her. And I said to him, that's fantastic. People are better than guitars. You've got to
Yeah.
live your life as a person, and that's what you're interpreting on your instrument.
Yeah.
So it's okay to acknowledge your love for a young lady who you're in love with
Yeah.
and want to do that. Now, I know that I was sheltered. I was sheltered from Van Halen. I was sheltered from Randy, meaning I didn't know their wild personalities, and they both had that.
Okay.
I call it a Rolling Stone moment, I guess, with Randy, where he called to say, "How do I get better?" And I had a moment like that with Eddie, where he said to me, "I'm sober now, and I'm having trouble getting to that creative place because when I'm drunk, there's a little devil on my shoulder saying, go for it, go for it." And then he said to me, the things that you and everybody love that I do on the guitar, I did when I was drunk. I was able to, my inhibitions were gone and I went for it. And
Sure.
now that I'm sober, I have a harder time getting to that position. Well, we talked about it, and I encouraged him to stay there and do what it takes to uh, to reach that place without getting drunk again.
Yeah.
But he called to talk about that. He said, "Do you think that I'll continue to grow?" And I said, "Yes, absolutely." I mean, uh, I told him that I thought that he had already grown beyond Eric Clapton in the sense that Clapton was great in the Yardbirds, he was great in Cream, he was great in Derek and the Dominoes. And then when he became a solo artist and sort of did the Tulsa Lay Down Sally stuff, he lost some sort of
Edge.
uh, uh, I don't know, propulsion. Like there's
Yeah.
certain energy that he lost that can be heard on the John Mayall Bino album that is not heard on, the
Correct.
Boulevard album.
Correct. You're totally
Hmm.
correct. Yep.
I mean, personally, I love Clapton playing a Gibson instead of a Fender. That's just my thing. But there was a certain uh, uh, jet propulsion that he had that he lost. That jet propulsion is what made Steve Ray Vaughan so amazing on a Strat.
Yes.
His conviction was incredible. And
Yes.
I thought
Yeah.
that Eric Clapton lost some of that energy and conviction, and that Eddie had done it for more albums than Clapton had.
Yeah, I'd agree with that
Yeah.
for sure.
You know,
Totally.
I would
so
definitely agree with that.
that I told him you should be proud of that and go, you know. go and live with that, you know.
So you're like almost his
Yeah.
older brother to these guys. Were you
Yeah,
kind of picking that
I
up when
think
you were?
I also gave him a lot. I also said, you know, when you have a child, I told every one of them, when you have a child, take a picture of that child once a month for the first year, and that way, when you show people pictures, you only have to show them 12. But we talked about being a parent and how important it was uh, to be there as a parent. It
Yeah,
was more important than I think than when you do the music, you do the music, but when you be the parent, you be the parent.
right.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to tell you how being a parent got me a wonderful interview with Ringo Starr.
Oh,
Uh, when I uh, when I met Ringo Starr, the first thing I said to him is, "My daughter is such a fan of yours because you're Mr. Conductor." My daughter knew him. Well, I don't know if you knew this, but he was on television on PBS and Thomas the Train,
yeah.
and he played the part of a conductor,
That's
That's
and he
right.
would talk
amazing.
to the kids. And
Yeah,
my daughter, who was a little girl,
yeah.
just knew him because he was Mr. Conductor on the TV show.
Oh,
She
I
didn't
bet he got a kick out of
follow
that.
him. And he just loved that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And as a result, we had a great, great time. And in fact, another wonderful interview I had about having children and spending time with them was Brad Delp, the lead vocalist of Boston.
Yeah.
We
Oh,
half hour talking about our kids and what we do with them. And that made him human and it made me human. And I have no doubt that it made our interview that much better because of it.
Oh, 100%.
yeah.
As we move on, is there something you can tell us about Randy that you haven't told anybody that would be something cool for people to know? I mean, I know you've talked about him probably a ton, but is there anything that
Yeah,
comes to mind?
I don't know if there's anything new. Maybe if we talk a little bit, something will come out.
Sure.
I'm fortunate that I've been able to, that it was kind of sad that I think the only interviews Randy ever did about his guitar playing for magazines were with me.
Yeah.
So I did the story in Guitar World. I did the story in Guitar Player. I did the story in Guitar for the Practicing Musician and Player. And uh, everything that I've ever done or thought about Randy, I put into an app that came out. It came out on Apple Books. And uh, what happened was I worked with Randy's mom, Dolores, and
Okay.
his sister and his brother, Cal,
Hmm.
and we did this interactive Randy Rhoads. It was supposed to be a book. By the time it came out, they said, "We want you to do an app." And I said, "Nah, I don't want to do an app
Right.
because nobody goes to the Apple store. Um, no, I wanted it to be an app. I'm sorry. I wanted it to be an app and not a book. They says we want it to be a book in our bookstore. But I said nobody buys books from Apple. They buy them from Amazon.
Right.
They
Yeah.
said no, it's got to be a book and not an app. But for a number of years, I'm really proud of this. And you cannot get it anymore. It was an interactive app where the family gave me photos, where I worked with Dolores Rhodes and got her permission and approval for the whole thing. I think it was the only real Randy Rhodes family approved thing that you could get, and it was difficult to get because you had to have an Apple iPad. You know, that's if you didn't have an Apple iPad, you couldn't buy it. And
Right.
people who had them, you know, I tried to give it away for free to the Randy Rhodes community.
Yeah.
You know, and uh, Kelly Gardy was helpful, and I included everything I did with Rudy, everything I did with uh, Kevin Dubrow, with Ozzy, and it was all audio. So you
Okay.
heard Randy talk to you. You heard
Oh,
my interviews with Randy. You heard my interviews with Ozzy. You heard my interviews with Kel Rhodes. You heard my interviews with uh, his mom and his sister, and with again Kelly Gardy and everybody who I talked to about Randy. It was all there and it was interactive, and it had video, and it was just wonderful.
Yeah, it
And
sounds like it.
actually, You couldn't get it because the guy who was my, uh, I guess, technical guy retired, and he stopped. When Apple gives you, here's the new codes as we go on and on, you have to update it,
Right.
and he stopped working, and it could no longer be updated.
Oh,
I
wow.
have a copy
Wow.
in my iPad, but what I had to do is I took all of the writing that was part of the, and I put it into an Amazon book called The Randy Rhoads That I Know, or That I Knew. But you get none of the audio, you get none of the photos, you get none of the videos,
Sure.
you get none of the interaction.
Uh,
But all of that stuff I put into that Randy Rhoads That I Knew book.
oh, how cool is that?
Uh,
Wow, what a trip. Now, when you're like, let me ask you this. So obviously Randy passes, unfortunately, and whatnot. Um, what was it like interviewing Jake after that? Like, was that like, how was that, because he's the guy. I mean, I'm sure you might have interviewed Brad, right, before.
yeah, I certainly interviewed Brad, I certainly interviewed Jake, and I certainly became good friends with Zach.
Yeah,
Uh, they all loved Randy.
Mhm.
The thing about his playing was that you were touched by it, and he was authentically as a person. It was a reflection of him. It wasn't just a reflection of his technique and the melodies he came up with in his wonderful tone. It really was uh, Randy on those two records, and Randy on tribute too.
sure.
That those guys lived in LA. Like George Lynch is the guy who replaced Randy. When Randy went off to be join Ozzy, George Lynch was the guitar teacher who replaced him.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
those guys knew Randy from Quiet Riot,
sure, sure.
and he was quiet. He was respectful. He was a music lover, and his honesty is what comes through in the music that you now love. And you say it feels honest because it really was honest. It's the same thing with Van Halen. It's the same thing with Jeff Beck.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Were you just pinching yourself, realizing you're getting to talk to all these amazing players, and you're in a time period too. Like you bring up LA. I feel like LA's like there's a lot of DNA in LA. You know what I mean? Like Warren DeMartini, Jakey Lee, George Lynch. There's a lot of
I was, again, so lucky. I started Guitar Magazine in 1983. You know what happened in 1983? Just before then, pinball was a huge thing. In 1983, all of a sudden, Quiet Riot, Def Leppard, Scorpions, they all had #1 hits. So guitar playing became the same as Taylor Swift or Britney Spears or something. It
Yeah.
became
sure.
hit worthy, billboard worthy. It was AM radio. It wasn't just FM or underground radio. So when we started Guitar for the Practicing Musician magazine in 1983, guitar was king.
Yeah.
GIT opened up because guitar was king.
Yeah,
And so I was so lucky that I was there before then. I mean, I was there to interview Billy Joel and Brian Wilson. And I was there to interview Santana and Joe Walsh, you know, in the heyday of uh, 70s rock guitar playing.
sure.
And Journey. I did a lot of stuff with Neil Schon and did a lot of, and later, years later, did stuff with Steve Perry. But uh, I was primed by 83 by doing all that Japanese stuff that I was in guitar heaven. So when guitars became the top of the charts,
Yeah,
Iron Maiden, to Motley Crue,
Yeah.
I rode that whole wave and had a blast.
yeah. I bet. And did you have a good correspondence with everybody? I mean, did you get that respect because you were early in on Eddie? And you were, early in on Randy. Did like the Steve Vais and the Satrianis and those guys, were they very respected towards you in
Oh,
terms of?
they were responsive and respectful because, among other things, I would put them in the magazine. You have to remember that I made Joe Satriani my Guitar Secrets guy
Yeah.
I
before
love those
Circus of the
columns.
Alien.
I love those columns, by the way.
You know, I
Yeah.
made Steve Vai a Guitar Secrets guy before Passion and Warfare.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they, I had great experiences with those two guys as well. And they were a different kind of animal. They were studied. They
Yeah.
were, it's very interesting. I remember playing uh, what I think is a tremendous ballad, Always With
Always with
You,
me, always with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
for Jeff Beck. And he said, "Oh, that's really good, but it's studied." You know,
Mm.
I thought it was spectacular,
Yeah.
and he thought it was, you know, a little too schooled.
Right.
Interesting.
You know,
Interesting.
Uh,
Interesting.
I thought, ooh, you know.
Did,
By the same token, when I asked him what his favorite song was, the answer was, "I Want to Take You Higher" by Sly and the Family Stone.
Sly
Great.
was Sly
Great
was
song.
great though, dude.
Yeah.
Which surprised me, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But, and I would say also, like I said, Jeff Beck is somebody that I had a wonderful relationship with. Uh, I remember I spent the whole day with him at his house in England, and he lived in a house that was once the cannonball and cannon maker for Queen Elizabeth or something, you know.
Oh,
It was
wild.
a castle. And
Wow.
what I remember was amazing is that I think I was told that he loved peanut M&Ms, so I brought him a bag of peanut M&Ms. And for lunch, he made me a cucumber sandwich.
Mm. How British.
However, the thing with Jeff Beck was blew me away. Is very often I would be with somebody and I have them play for me, and I have
I was gonna ask you
recordings
that. I
of,
was gonna ask
of,
you that.
I have recordings of Van Halen playing all kinds of stuff for
Oh,
me,
wow.
and I
Wow.
have recordings of Al Di Meola, getting it ready. You have to warm
Okay.
up to get it ready. But Jeff Beck, I said to him, uh, I think the song is "Where Were You," a ballad from Guitar Shop, where it's all harmonics. And I said to him, "Are you using any kind of uh, electronics to get that?" And he looks at me like he's insulted. He goes, "What are you talking about? Come on!" Just comes, he plugs a Strat into a little Fender amp and just plays the song for me. My
Wow.
point being
Wow.
that immediately, without warm up of any kind, Jeff Beck was Jeff Beck.
Wow.
I
You know,
believe that. Yeah.
just right out of the cold. He's Jeff. He was Jeff Beck, and he also, like Eddie, it just flowed out of him. He needed a great drummer, but
Mm.
like I said, if he was on a tremendous song, he would be up there even higher than he is. At the moment, he's respected by electric guitar players everywhere.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe the closest he got was "People Get Ready." You know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Late 80s, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and
Yep.
the other thing that was interesting that Pete Townsend said, he says Jeff Beck is the greatest voice, but he has nothing to say, meaning he was not a composer.
That's
Sure.
interesting.
Randy was a composer, Ed was a composer, Jimmy Page is a composer, Clapton, Hendrix. Beck really wasn't a composer. He was like Joe Cocker, an amazing interpreter of songs.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
That
that's
makes a lot of sense. It's just occurring to me as we're kind of going down this. I think that yeah, like you were overseeing the guitar world, as it were, at a really the gold rush era, and I think it's incredible that you had these interactions with all these legends, right? But what about Yngwie?
You know, uh, I did do a lot of work with Yngwie
Sure.
because I'm going to be honest with you, uh, my audience loved him, and I
Hmm.
thought he was a great technician.
Yeah.
But I thought the songwriting was okay, and I thought that Yngwie is a stylist. It's the hardest thing in the world to be a stylist.
Yeah.
BB King is a stylist. Yngwie is a stylist.
Yeah.
So his style, on a personal level, didn't touch my heart.
Yeah, I'm not
I
asking because I'm
interviewed him
a
many times and we talked
yeah,
about all kinds of stuff,
yeah,
but uh, and we got along. And maybe we got along
okay.
because I didn't treat him like a god.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just think and I agree with that assessment that he's not a great songwriter. Um but boy, he could play, but
Yeah,
that was about it.
and it is it's like John Coltrane in the later
Mm,
years. If you relax and let the hurricane blow over you, you can hear and feel the beauty of the hurricane. He's a
yeah,
hurricane.
yes.
And
I,
so,
I would assume personally as well from all the
yeah,
turnover
he's
in
pretty big
bands.
ego. He's a pretty big ego.
You get that impression pretty easily. And
And
that's okay. That's
I
okay.
found that the genius level people don't have an ego at all. It just
Yeah.
they're
Why
just
would they?
they're just it flows through them and they follow the muse. I
Yeah.
would also say that Yngwie, and not to take away from the flavor, he
Hmm.
is great flavored ice cream, and I love 36 flavors or 42 flavors. I want the
Yeah.
Crayola box with 101 crayons.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense because he is a bit one. I was going to say one note, but it's more like 10 million notes. He's one color for the
You
most
know,
part.
and if you're really good at that, this is interesting. Being a fan of jazz, Charlie
Yeah.
Parker played really fast, played
Hmm.
a lot of notes, but nobody thought of Charlie Parker as playing fast. His saxophone playing. Nobody talks about Charlie Parker. They talk about him as this amazing improviser who could hear chord substitutions and play over the chords in myriad ways melodically.
Yeah.
I didn't think of him as fast. I'll give you another example. I am a big fan of Steve Vai. I
Hmm.
like his compositions, and he touches my heart, and he has a wonderful, colorful imagination. And I think he has an amazing technique, but I don't think of him as a fast player.
Yeah.
Yngwie is a fast player.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree. I think that especially by the time we get into the late 80s, like there's so many of those guitar players. Like guitar playing is now almost like an extreme sport
Hmm.
where it's this race for the speed of light and who can fit more into less. Um, and I mean, there's some great players that came out around that time. I mean, Yngwie kind of kicked that off, I think. But by the time we get into Mike Varney's army of
Well,
shredders,
yeah, well, Mike Varney kicked off Yngwie. Mike
yeah,
Varney launched 1,000 picks too.
absolutely, yeah.
And he, I can remember the one artist that he had that I wish had signed with me was Michael Lee Firkins. I
Oh,
thought
he was great.
I thought that he had a real bendy
Yeah,
way of doing things. In fact, Mike Varney is important to electric rock guitar playing because all the people, the Vinnie Moores and the Yngwies
yep,
and Gilberts,
yep.
and he was an inspiration for me to start guitar recordings.
Mm,
Except I did something different. I purposely said uh, my first signing was Blue Saraceno at 16. And I said, I want somebody with talent, taste, tone, and phrasing.
yeah. Well,
And
you found that.
Oh my
and
God,
I
and some with
purposely
him.
I put out a record that some people know, but not many people know that I'm proud of. It was called what's it called? I'm not gonna remember what it's called now.
That's how proud you
But
are of it.
Guitar Battle.
Okay.
And I put it out for Japan. And uh, I got a great band of Al Pitrelli and John O'Reilly and Danny Miranda was a bass player in Blue Oyster Cult, and
Okay.
they played 6 tracks, beds,
Hmm.
and then I got a variety of guitar players to play the melody and the solos, and uh, boy, I'm embarrassed I don't remember all of them. It was Andy Timmons, John Petrucci, Steve Morse, George Lynch, George uh, Brad Gillis,
Mhm.
Al Pitrelli, and I'm sure I'm leaving somebody out, which is horrible. Uh, and they, for example, we did a version of the Beatles something, and my instructions to everybody were, oh, and also Michael Lee Firkins. That's who I was leaving out.
Okay. Okay.
My instructions are, I want you to play the melody like you're a vocalist, and I want you to use your phrasing and your editing and your tastefulness of Jeff Beck on Cause We Vendettas Lovers.
Mm.
I want you to
Okay.
hold back. You've got to print with your sound. I'm not going to mess with your sound. So you print with your tone and
Yeah.
play as I just directed.
Right.
And if you look on YouTube, the guitar battle, something
Yeah.
that's, and there's another ballad on there that John Petrucci was just studying. We did Purple Rain. This is
Yep.
decades before Prince passed away.
Okay.
And everybody plays amazing on that as well. Again, Andy Timmons, Brad Gillis, Petrucci, Al Petrelli, you know,
Red
and
Beach, Steve
Red,
Morse.
Red Beach is on there. Thank you. So
Yeah.
you're familiar with it.
I'm looking it up right now.
Oh, okay.
It's part of my
Uh,
job. I do
okay.
research on the fly.
Anyway, I'm really proud of that album because that's my Mike Varney album, but
Yeah.
nobody was told to play fast. Mike would actually say play as fast as you can and then play faster.
Right. Yeah.
It makes
That
sense.
doesn't
Yeah.
surprise me. I want to ask you this because you brought him up. I had a chance to meet him and thought he was such a nice guy and super humble. Blue Saraceno. What did you think about Blue Saraceno playing in Cream? What was your vibe on that? I thought that was
Well, it
interesting.
was pretty. It was really pretty cool. I mean, uh, my one of my best friends growing up, childhood friends, is a guy named George Gilbert, and George Gilbert at the time was Jack Bruce's manager. So I was able to get Blues his audition,
Oh, cool. Very cool.
and it was. I thought it was. I thought it was interesting because what you need to know about Blues and the three records I did with him is that Blues is a wonderful composer.
Yeah.
And that those records, which sound spontaneous, they sound like a melody, they sound like uh, improvisation, every note was worked out.
Really?
Mm.
Those first three, the
Wow.
albums we did together, those notes were worked out. He could do those solos flawlessly, note for note, again and again and again and again.
That's
Wow.
so Hairpick, Never Look Back, and
Plaid.
Plaid. Wow.
And
That's
I'm telling
crazy.
you that when he would play those songs, he could play every note perfectly
On command, huh?
on
That's
command.
crazy.
And
Wow.
so that's how much control he had
Yeah.
over what he was doing.
And
Wow.
now he writes a ton of stuff for like
So when he was
soundtracks.
with Jack and Ginger, I thought, good luck, because they're going to want him to play. If you notice, those albums are short, the songs are short.
Yeah.
When he plays with Jack and Ginger, it's a fantastic experience.
Yes.
No, he didn't have a great experience. I mean, he loved it,
Oh,
but
interesting.
there were no girls. People went to see Cream were old men like me.
Yeah.
There weren't enough girls. Ginger was a nasty motherfucker.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he was to everybody. He wasn't just Blues.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Jack really appreciated Blues' playing, or he wouldn't put him in there.
Sure.
But there are certain things. There's a blues playing in what's the country? It's not Poland. It'll come to me. There's some videos that come out where they play really, really well.
Yeah.
But I thought that Blues would have a harder time improvising for the length that he had to.
Sure.
Mm.
But Blues' tone, his phrasing, and his melodies, to me, were spectacular. And to this day, they're spectacular.
That tone, man, is
Yeah.
just that mid-rangey. It's such a great tone. It was so fresh compared to
I
what
have
everybody else
heard
was doing,
that
too.
he sent me a cassette that had the first three songs that were on Never Look Back. And the first song that I heard was the ballad. What's the ballad called? It's the opening
Look,
track, I Never Look Back.
looking.
You looking it up? All right, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when I listen to those records, I don't even know songs. I just listen to the record as a whole.
Yeah.
That's
Remember When, I think it's called.
Never look back.
Opening song.
Remember when?
Okay.
Yeah.
I heard Remember When as a demo, and it sounded just like you hear it on that album. A little better recording, but just note for note. And I said, that's it. I heard that one song. I said, this is the guy.
Wow.
that's awesome. You weren't
Yeah,
wrong.
he's a spectacular player and really, really had a fresh voice for that time. I mean, I remember having a conversation with Dimebag Darrell, who loved the Plaid album so much he got a piece of plaid tattooed on his leg.
Yeah.
Um, and we talked about that album like one night of hanging out. And yeah, blues was a monster.
He really was. Hey, I want to
It
ask you
was,
about this.
it was interesting. I'll tell you, I had a little bit of a hard time with him in the studio, just a little. And it was this, because everything is mapped out. We're going from A to B. So there's
Right.
a line, there's a melody he's playing. And I had a hard time convincing him that on some takes, when he went from A to B, he thought it was a mistake and I thought it was better. It was just different.
Hmm.
Right? So he wanted the exact phrasing and timing, each time. And sometimes he would do something different because we all do something different every time
Sure.
we, say the words or play the guitar. We play the lick. It's a lick we want to play, but it's different. And I can remember saying, it's okay that it's different. It's good. It's not a mistake.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
As a producer, what you want to do is let him do his thing, let him make those differences, and then choose the best of all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah, for
But
sure.
I can remember that he had a hard time thinking that if something was different, that it wasn't as good. But it
Hmm.
really is different.
yeah,
But
no,
those
that's it.
three albums were great. There's some Blue Saraceno that you may not have heard, which is tremendous. I don't know if you were ever a fan of Randy Coven,
Oh, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Yeah, I
but
remember.
Randy Coven had an album called Sammy Says Ouch. And on that album, he does a Charlie Parker song called Au Provence. Au Provence? Yeah, I think that's how you pronounce it. It's a Charlie Parker swing and jazz blues. And on that record, I had blues do a guitar solo. Wasn't Al Pitrelli on that song? Al Pitrelli and Randy Coven play the melody, the Charlie Parker bebop melody,
Hmm.
and then blues comes on and does his thing. And he starts off with the sound of a horse, and he plays "Stepping Out" a little bit from the Beano album with John Mayall and Clapton,
Yeah.
and that is some more great Blue Saraceno that many people may not know exists. And it was of the period. It was of the period of, I think it was after Never Look Back and maybe around Plaid or before Plaid.
It's like
Hmm.
93, 94 era, somewhere
So
around
if
there.
you look up the Sammy Says Ouch album on I guess Spotify or something,
Yeah.
and look up Oprah Vaughan, it'll be Randy Coven, Al Pitrelli, tremendous guitar player,
Yeah.
and the solo is blues as if he's playing in John Mayall's Blues Breakers.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Hey, I want to
And
ask
Blues and I are still buddies. And Blues went on and
Hmm.
had a wonderful career, actually composing music for TV and movies.
TV and movies, absolutely. Yeah. And he also plays on a bunch of people's stuff if they send him things too, which I think is crazy too. He's an amazing guy. Let me ask you this, John. What did you think of 5150 Studios? You spent a lot of time there, I'm assuming.
I spent some time, I'm not going to say I spent a lot of time there.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great home studio. And the reason he was able to survive, a lot of home studios were shut down in LA because people tried to say, hey, use my studio. I got a home studio. That all of a sudden becomes a commercial thing. Van Halen was not shut down. The only people who used that studio were Alex and Eddie in the band.
Interesting.
Hmm.
And
Interesting.
it was up the hill from the house, so it was totally separate. It wasn't attached.
Yeah. Yeah, the racquetball court, hint, hint.
And so I spent some time. I don't feel like I spent a lot of time there,
Sure.
but you know, I
I,
spent time talking with Ed from the first album through Balance,
okay.
which
Okay.
is pretty much a lot of the career.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
100%. I
and
mean,
and somehow when I hear Van Halen 3 uh, with the singer from Extreme,
right.
I tried to listen to it a dozen times and I can't get through it.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I mean, Ed and Alex and uh, are great on there. You know, you got the great bass playing, you got the vocals, and I think that that the singer sounds too much like Sammy. But there's
Yes.
got to be good. I'm sure there are good songs on there, but I couldn't get through it.
Yeah, I think you and a lot of other people kind of felt the same way. I think it was almost like he was trying too hard to be Sammy, didn't want to be Dave. And that's also, that's a weird time period for music too. A lot of those bands survived grunge that did. Van Halen, Bon Jovi are probably the only two ones. And then you're in this new metal phase two. People aren't really playing guitar anymore like they used to. That's a
You
lot
know,
of weird water to chart, you know
that's
what I
how I
mean?
got out of Guitar Magazine. I left. In
Mm.
all honesty, when grunge hit, uh, I just couldn't get behind three chords and the truth. I wanted a little more Reb Beach.
Sure. Was there
You
any
know,
guys you
I
liked?
wanted people who, I mean, I really like Kim Thale from Soundgarden. He
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
a guy who I liked in that era.
Yeah.
But I, Alice in Chains did not speak to my heart.
Mm.
Okay.
You know, I'm not saying they're not good. I'm not saying they didn't have
Yeah, yeah,
style.
yeah.
I'm just saying that. And then what happened is there was the whole post metal thing that I really had nothing to do with. My
Sure.
metal uh, ears sort of stopped with the Metallica school of metal.
Sure.
Okay.
That makes
And
sense.
then when it became uh, vocals uh,
Yeah.
and just pedal to the metal speed,
Yeah.
uh, and the blues was no longer an influence in metal.
Right.
Hmm.
You know,
Makes total
I mean, I
sense.
had some great times with Tony Iommi. I mean, that's classic,
Yeah.
you know, of the era. You know,
Yeah.
Another
when
one.
Black Sabbath stopped being an influence in heavy metal, I stopped as well.
Yeah.
I said I can't do this. In all honesty, I can't.
That's fair.
You know.
That's
And then when I stopped, I think the last guitar hero there ever was, universal guitar hero, was Zach Wild.
let me ask you this real quick. And excuse me if I don't remember. Did you get to interview Jason Becker?
Oh, you know what? Jason was a good buddy.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yes, I knew Jason uh, when he was with Marty,
Yeah.
and when I
Cacophony.
first met them, I spent a whole day talking to Cacophony.
Yeah.
Uh, I think it was in San Francisco,
Yeah,
which
that
is
probably
what
Hmm.
makes sense.
and Marty and he were teenagers,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and Jason and I got along really well, and uh, I was thrilled when he got the gig with David Lee Roth.
Yeah.
Then when he was diagnosed with ALS, I said to him, "You ever been to New York?" He said, "No." I said, "Okay." You know, by this time he's already uh, walking with crutches.
Sure.
Instead of me going to LA, I said, "I'll give you a ticket. You're going to come to New York and stay with me and my family for a bunch of days." And I brought him into Manhattan and took him around and showed him New York. And we did all kinds of family things and fun things and guitar things. And we did a zillion photo shoots because we knew this would be the only time he'd be able to do it.
Sure.
Wow.
And it felt wonderful. It felt wonderful.
Yeah.
And Jason was, he and I mean, he knows my daughters. Uh, and I'm proud to say that in Guitars Practicing Musicians, the very last thing he ever recorded himself as a player
Right.
for me, Meet Me in the Morning. If you look
Oh,
at
the Dylan.
the
Yeah.
Great Blues, did it with Steve Hunter.
Yeah.
and it was the David Lee Roth band without Roth. Uh, and that's the last thing that he ever put guitar in his hand.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
He,
a
he
Jason's such an
it's a
inspiration.
fantastic blues, and uh, he also you, wrote out a bunch of stuff for me. I was he wrote out Air, which is one of his favorite songs from
Yeah.
his first solo album. One of the things that I was able to do, uh, again, Mr. Lucky, is uh, I would spend time with musicians, and I had the transcriptions. And some people can write music. Steve Morse can write music like a musician. Joe Satriani can do that. Steve Vai can do that. But I would show them the transcription to their song and ask them if they would write out music for me. I'll give you an example.
Sure.
When I spent the day with Jeff Beck, I had him write out the music, the Freeway
Oh,
Jam,
wow, that's so
Wow.
cool.
the same way Jason Becker wrote out Air,
Wow.
and Eddie wrote out Eruption for me. Yngwie wrote out Black Star.
Wow.
I learned Black Star from that magazine.
I did
Yeah.
too.
But
Yeah.
Yngwie hand wrote out
It's
that.
amazing.
I'll show you something that I believe was Chet Thompson gave me this. As long as we're talking about Randy a lot.
Yeah.
I don't see if you can see it.
Yeah.
Oh,
This is a handwritten Randy Rhoads guitar lesson.
Oh, wow. That's
wow.
amazing.
This is what he used to give to people.
How
So
cool.
I have a whole bunch of wonderful, little guitar stuff. Satriani wrote out "Always with Me, Always with You,"
Wow.
Mhm.
and just Robert Plant wrote out the lyrics of "Stairway to Heaven."
Wow.
So uh, Santana wrote out "Europa" for me, and then he told me that it originally had lyrics, and the lyrics
Huh.
were, "The mushroom lady is coming to town. Good thing he didn't make it
I
a
was gonna say it's probably a good
lyric."
thing he turned it into instrumental. Oh my God, that's amazing.
So
I
I've had this wonderful guitar life. I'm totally blessed, and I guess that's it. I mean, I'll talk about anything you want,
That
but
was amazing.
No, it was amazing, and like I said in the beginning of the interview, you were very important to my life growing up as a
Hmm.
teenager, learning music from those magazines, reading your articles. Same thing with Mark, and
Yeah.
just you giving us the time you did today was amazing, and it was so much we got to learn. I really appreciate it
I needed Guitar
tremendously.
Magazine. I didn't have a great ear. I would have to work to as a player. I'm not a good player at all. I mean, that's the secret that nobody knows. Maybe they'll get it now. Is that I think I've only played once or twice where I felt really good, and I have to keep those people healthy so they remember.
Right, right.
My wife and other people will say that I'm being modest, or that I'm being modest because I got to play blues with Mike Bloomfield.
Oh, that's
How cool is
awesome.
that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Right?
amazing. And
Uh,
you're
so
interviewing guys that were phenomenal too, so it's like that's got to
But
be.
I don't have the touch. I know I don't have the touch, so I need a guitar magazine. I
Mhm.
knew that I wanted those transcriptions. I wanted that uh, tablature, and uh, I thought to myself, I'm going to provide a service if I can to the bottom of the pyramid. Think of pyramid. The top of that pyramid is Randy Rhoads, Jeff Beck, Van Halen. Everyone starts at the bottom.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
if I can help more people enjoy playing, remember we talked about at the beginning when
Yeah,
you play a rehearsal and you get it right, it feels great.
Yeah.
yeah.
If I can help more people love playing guitar, some of those people are going to continue on as they get closer to the top of the pyramid.
It's a beautiful journey, man. And I'll tell you right now, I looked forward going to my mailbox every month to get my guitar
Yeah.
for the practicing musician. Like, I mean, I couldn't be happy. I couldn't be happier right now. And before we let you
No.
go, Mark, is there anything you want to add?
No, I agree, and it's been fascinating. And I really do. I owe you severe gratitude for where you got me in my musical path.
Yeah.
Well, I got to
Um,
tell you, it's my pleasure, and what a thrill it is to have somebody enjoy it like you two guys. I mean,
Absolutely.
because you don't know, every issue we tried to make the best issue. Like you're playing cards and you've got four aces. You could put, one ace down at a time.
Yeah.
I tried to put four aces in every issue and not worry about what the next one was going to be.
No, I learned so much
Yeah, I
from
really
that
don't feel like you
publication.
missed. I don't really feel like you
Yeah.
missed. Every once in a
Well,
while,
the
I'd be
whole
like, I don't
point
know,
was
you know.
a whole deal. You not only are you going to read about it, but you can play it.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you
No,
want to
it
read
was.
about Randy Rhoads, you really want to play some of his music.
Yeah.
He's
No, it was incredible.
he's
Um,
very, very smart.
yeah.
John, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciated this conversation, and
Yes.
you
Well,
are
my pleasure.
welcome.
Let me know if you need anything else. If there's anything funky we need to talk over, you want to re-edit, I'm
Cool.
here.
Man,
Awesome.
that's amazing. That would be wonderful. Yeah, I
Okay.
Yeah.
Like for example, if some of the photos didn't come out good, or you need me to hold
Ooh.
stuff up together.
Okay.
okay, yeah,
Okay.
and also, if you ever want to come on again, you're more than welcome to. I
Yeah,
mean,
for sure.
we really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah.
It was great.
It
Well, who
really.
knows? Maybe we can do it. And I'll get Blue Saraceno to do it with me,
Oh my God, that would
or
be
something like that.
amazing.
Yes.
Yes, let's do that.
My answer is yes.
Yes, the answer is yes. You just let me know when that happens, and we'll make that happen for sure. I'd love
Okay.
to
Yeah.
pick his brain with you sitting right next to. Oh, that'd be great. Both of you guys together, that'd be
Well, he's in
phenomenal.
LA, so we'd have to do it via Zoom. But
Sure.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine. That's fine. Yeah, if you want to set that up, my friend. And then when
Yeah.
we get all this edited and stuff, I'll send you a link to the
yeah,
podcast and
send me a
whatnot.
link. I think I would show him other people you've done, not necessarily me.
Yeah, yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Okay,
Wonderful.
great.
Thanks, John,
Cool.
for your time.
Have
Super
fun.
appreciate you. Take
Happy
care.
Thank you,
trails.
John.
Man, that was a killer episode. I mean,
That
reminds
was.
me of being a kid and waiting for those magazines to come in. But like, there's the guy that interviewed Eddie Van Halen. There's a guy that interviewed Randy Rhoads, Jeff Beck, Steve Vai, Joe Satriani,
Yeah.
Yngwie, George Lynch. I mean, you name it, that
All
guy.
of them.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing that was cool about him, and we got it from the conversation too, is that he was so personable, and like you
Yeah.
understood why those interviews were so great in those magazines. You
Yes.
could tell because he was just a down to earth guy that was excited to talk about music, excited to
Hmm.
talk to us. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It was. Man, it was just crazy. Some of the stories were like, I'm thinking like, that's just your life, huh?
Yeah,
Like
right.
that was just how you lived.
Yeah,
It's
Yngwie's just right
incredible.
now backstar for me. Yeah.
Yeah, and like the Jason Becker thing was really beautiful.
Yeah.
It was a great time, and he was an awesome dude. Um, I loved it. I loved it. It was a
Oh,
great
I
show.
100% loved it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Like yet again, I always forget to do something to begin the show, but subscribe, like all that crap. We appreciate you all. We see the numbers going up, and we definitely appreciate it. And we get great guests like John Stix,
Yes, sir.
who is, if you're an older guitar player like us, that guy was really an important part of your growing up as a guitar player.
Absolutely.
100%. So I was so gracious. He gave us his time, and he was such a great guy. Even email interaction, he was amazing. So
Yeah.
that's that. Anything you want to add before we get out of here, my friend?
I'm gonna say go listen to Blue Saraceno Plaid.
That's a great choice.
That's what I'm gonna say.
That's a great choice. I'm going to say let's do Yngwie Malmsteen's Rising Force,
Hard to go wrong.
right? Either one of those records. And
Yeah.
I love how much John had a palette for music from what he started
Yeah.
on all the way through that era. A lot of people stopped when the guitar started getting interesting, and he kind of kept going
Hmm.
through it and got it. So
Yep.
I thought that was great. Ladies and
That was
gentlemen,
cool.
like I say at every end of the show, be good yourselves, be good to others, tell a friend, text somebody, say hi, and tell them you found a good new podcast called Mixtapes. And we'll talk to you soon.